So subplots offer a great way for you to add dimension to your story. Subplots give you the opportunity to shed light on your broader world by focusing on mini stories generally driven by characters who are not your main character, and all of this happens below the main story thread. Now here in front of us right now, I have all of my plot cards organized digitally. Now here you'll see each plot card shows me my plot point, title, summary, location, the characters who are in this chapter, as well as how far along I've come in terms of reaching my writing goals for this chapter. Now, just above this section here, you'll notice that I have these tags. Now, these tags can serve as many things, but one of the most common uses for chapter tags is to mark your story's subplots. Now here, for example, you can see that this chapter touches on my love story subplot, or here you'll see that I'm touching on my mentor subplot. Now, of course, you can map out your plot using sticky notes if you want, but if you want to follow along using the story plotting tool that I'm using here, I'll provide a link to Scribble in the description below. Now within Scribble, you can add tags whenever you're on your main writing pad page. So on this page, all you need to do is simply click on Add Tags, and then you can add your tags here. Now, one really important note is that if you plan on reusing the same tag to represent one subplot, the tag needs to be spelled exactly the same each time. So for example, if you name your tag Love Story to represent your love story subplot, you need to write Love Story exactly the same each time you add it to a new chapter. This way, over on your subplot page, it will group all of the tags called Love Story as the same subplot. Now, if you name them different things, they would show up here as different subplots. Another important detail about adding tags is that you can also color code them for easy visual reference. Now, what we normally suggest doing is color coding each tag you want to group the same color. Okay, now back on our plot visualization page, what we have in front of us right now is our story with a focus on our main plot or through line. Now, this is the main story that gets us from the beginning all the way to the end. However, what if we wanted to dive into these subplots in more detail? After all, these subplots aren't just kind of passing mentions in a chapter. They are stories in and of themselves, with characters, with sub-goals, arcs, and twists. So in order to give these subplots the attention they deserve, we can go over to this subplot page here, which will allow us to plan out our subplots in much greater detail. Now keep in mind, this page will only show your subplots once you've added tags to your individual chapters. So here, where it says all chapters, I can see all of my 24 chapters laid out here. Now the chapters are color-coded based on their acts. So here we have Act 1, Act 2A, Act 2B, as well as the third and final act here. Now, if you were to roll over any of these chapters, you'd see the chapter title as well as description. Now, just above the chapters, what you see is these really small cards here, and these cards represent the main story's plot points. So, for example, here, above chapter 9, we have the first pinch point. But the main story and the main story's plot points aren't our main focus on this page. Again, we can see these details in much better detail over on our main story's plot visualization page. Here, these main plot cards are included really only for visual reference, so you can keep your eye on how your main story is interacting with your subplots, which you're going to see down here below. Now, these subplots, which live below the main storyline here, are the main things that we're interested in over on the subplot page. So once we've added a tag to a chapter, it will show up here. Here, for example, I can see my tags relating to my love story, or below that, I see my mentor subplot from beginning to end. So we're going to look at how all of this works in more detail in a moment, but first let's just talk about why subplots are important. I think, first of all, subplots are important because in the majority of cases, a story without subplots would likely start to feel repetitive after a while. Now, if we look above at our main plot here, if we just followed our main character, essentially trying to achieve their goal, kind of chapter after chapter, scene after scene, we'd risk our story feeling a bit two-dimensional and flat after a while. Therefore, subplots help us break up the monotony of the main story. They connect our audience to multiple characters within our story. They allow us to explore our story's theme from multiple angles. They allow us to add more complexity to our story. They help us define more well-rounded characters. They help us flesh out our world. And lastly, they help us keep momentum going in our story's middle, since we can place kind of dramatic subplot moments in spaces where perhaps our main story is in a bit of a lull. So now that we know all of this, we need to start placing our subplots down here. But just before we do that, let's talk about a couple of things we need to be careful of whenever we're kind of working with subplots. So first of all, although these subplots are mini stories, they are not breakaway stories and therefore need to be connected to your main story in some way. Now these mini stories are generally used to help push our protagonist through to their end goal within the main storyline here. Or, if they're not used to push your protagonist forward, they're generally used to obstruct your main character from achieving their goal, again in the main storyline up here. Now, subplots are also connected to the main storyline because they also allow us to do things like explore our story's theme from different angles or from different characters' point of view. Another thing that connects them to the main storyline up here is that they allow us to better define our stories, our main stories' secondary characters. Again, within Scribble over on our People and Places page, you'll see that we have this character profile template. So just click on Edit here and then you'll be able to design your character from the ground up. Now it's important that you don't just do this for your main character. Your secondary characters are not just props for your main character to use to push their story forward. These secondary characters should feel like real, living, breathing human beings. So once you've developed your characters using this character profile template, you can take this a step further by adding this character as the main person this subplot revolves around. Now, in the vast majority of cases, subplots are linked to individual people, sometimes groups, but generally people. Now, essentially, it will be this person or group's mini story that we're following. So again, in order to add a character here, we first need to have that character added to our book. So again, over on our Books, People, and Places tab, we can add a character. Now, we can even use our built-in AI character avatar generation tool to design a character for us based on the kind of prompt that we enter here. Now, once your character is added back on your subplots page, we can associate this character with the subplot here. So now we can visually see this character is the character that represents this mini story. So visually already this is very helpful, but we can even go deeper than this. And that's because we can click on each of these subplot points. Now first, notice that a subplot, like a main plot, will have an inciting incident. The character who represents the subplot will generally have a goal. There will be obstacles, a climax, as well as a resolution. Now this means that we can now map out the arc of our subplot, not just our main plot. Now notice that each subplot point is visually represented by different icons, and this allows us to see how story B's or story C's subplot is progressing, as well as where it's progressing in relation to the main plot's plot points, again located up here. Now another helpful feature within this tool is the ability to plan out your subplot summaries. This allows you to really kind of plan out the purpose of each subplot, scene, or chapter. Now, equally important are these two other tabs here. Now, on this tab here, I can write down how the subplot will impact my main plot, how it's either supporting or obstructing my main story's plot. And we can even get more complex in this. In some of the most interesting stories that I know of, these subplots not only interact with the main plot, but they also interact amongst themselves. Now, it adds a really interesting level of complexity when something in subplot B, for example, has a consequence in the outcome of subplot C. Now there's a lot more to be said about subplots, and I'll cover this topic in much greater detail in upcoming tutorials, but for now, let's stop it there. Again, if you want to use the subplotting tool or any of the other plotting or character development tools showcased in this video, then simply head over to Scribble today and start playing around. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe as we publish new videos for authors frequently. Thanks for stopping by today.